Every dynasty reaches that moment where the torch must be passed, where the legend who carried the franchise for years steps aside so the next generation can soar, where organizational decisions become less about sentiment and more about strategic championship building. The Los Angeles Lakers are standing at that exact crossroads right now, and the decision the organization faces isn't just about basketball operations. It's about redefining what this franchise will look like for the next decade while honoring the contributions of someone who brought championship glory back to Crypto.com Arena. Welcome to Lakers News Fan Report, your home for the latest updated news, insider analysis, and exclusive breakdowns on our beloved Los Angeles Lakers, where we don't just report what's happening, we dive deep into what it means for the purple and gold faithful. Today I need to walk you through a situation that's been developing throughout this season, something that involves the greatest player of his generation, something that connects directly to how the Lakers are constructing their championship window moving forward, and something that could fundamentally alter the landscape of this franchise in ways we haven't seen since the Kobe era ended. Stay locked in because what I'm about to share requires context, nuance, and an understanding of where this organization is headed. Let me start by painting the picture of where the Lakers currently stand, because the numbers tell a story that's impossible to ignore. We're 15-4 after that dominant performance against the New Orleans Pelicans on Sunday, sitting near the top of the Western Conference standings with one of the most balanced rosters we've had in years. This isn't the struggling Lakers team that's been barely scraping into the playoffs. This is a legitimate championship contender that's playing cohesive basketball on both ends of the floor, executing at a high level consistently, and showing the kind of depth that's required to survive the grueling 82-game season and make a deep playoff run. That record didn't happen by accident. It's the result of strategic decisions made by the front office, excellent coaching, and players stepping into expanded roles with confidence. But here's what makes that 15-4 record particularly fascinating from an analytical standpoint. The Lakers have been flying high, even in games where their most accomplished player, someone who's been the focal point of every team he's played for during his two-decade career, hasn't been on the floor. We've won games without our veteran superstar, we've maintained offensive efficiency without his playmaking, and we've shown defensive intensity that doesn't diminish when he's managing his workload. That's not a criticism of his contributions. It's an acknowledgement of how this roster has evolved and how other players have elevated their games to fill any potential voids in the rotation. The team's success, independent of one specific player's presence, tells us something significant about roster construction and organizational philosophy moving forward. The transformation of this Lakers team really began in February when the organization made what can only be described as one of the most polarizing trades in NBA history. Nobody saw it coming, the basketball world was absolutely shocked, and the immediate reactions ranged from calling it genius to predicting it would be a disaster. The Lakers sent Anthony Davis to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for Luka Doncic, trading away a dominant two-way big man who had been the defensive anchor of the team for a 26-year-old offensive savant, who many consider the most skilled player in basketball. That trade fundamentally altered the identity of this franchise, shifting from a team built around inside-out dominance to one centered on perimeter brilliance and offensive creativity. Luka Doncic has been absolutely sensational since arriving in Los Angeles, and I need to emphasize just how transformative his presence has been for this organization. We're talking about an MVP candidate who's averaging elite numbers across the board, who can create his own shot whenever he wants, who makes everyone around him better with his passing vision and basketball IQ, and who has that clutch gene that championship teams absolutely need in late-game situations. Doncic, at 26 years old, represents the future of this franchise for the next decade, and his arrival has energized the fan base in ways we haven't seen since the early days of the championship core. When he has the ball in his hands, you feel like anything is possible. and that confidence permeates throughout the entire roster. But Doncic isn't the only player who's exceeded expectations this season. Austin Reaves has emerged as the 2025 to 2026 season's most surprising breakout star, elevating his game to levels that have made him a legitimate third option on a championship-caliber team. Reaves is scoring efficiently, making smart decisions with the basketball, defending multiple positions with intensity, and showing the kind of growth that validates the organization's belief in developing players internally rather than always looking externally for solutions. His chemistry with Doncic has been particularly impressive, with the two of them developing a two-man game that's extremely difficult for defenses to contain because they can both shoot, pass, and create for themselves and others. Now, here's where we need to address the situation that's been generating intense discussion among media members, analysts, and Lakers fans across the globe. For the first time in his legendary two-decade career, LeBron James is not the main man of the franchise he plays for. That's not a slight against his abilities. It's simply the reality of roster construction when you add a player like Luka Doncic, who's in his absolute prime and demands the ball in his hands to maximize his effectiveness. James, at 41 years old, is still capable of elite basketball. He's still averaging over 20 points per game when healthy. He still has that basketball IQ that allows him to impact winning in multiple ways beyond just scoring. But the organizational hierarchy has shifted, the offensive pecking order has changed, and that creates a situation that requires honest evaluation from everyone involved. Stephen A. Smith, who has had his disagreements with James over the years, but remains one of the most respected voices in basketball media, recently provided his analysis of the situation on his platform. Smith acknowledged that James, even while dealing with sciatica issues that have bothered his left leg, can absolutely still play at a high level and contribute meaningful minutes to a championship team. The analyst emphasized that if James returned healthy, he could easily average above 20 points per game and provide veteran leadership that's invaluable during playoff runs, when experience matters enormously. Smith wasn't questioning James's basketball abilities or suggesting he's washed up. He was making a different point entirely about organizational decision-making. According to Smith's analysis, if the Lakers had their choice, they would move James not because of his performance, but because of his age and the franchise's long-term strategic direction. Smith specifically stated that the decision would be driven by James being 41 years old while Doncic is 26, creating a situation where the organization wants to build around young core pieces rather than managing the workload of someone who's approaching the end of his career. Smith's quote was direct and unambiguous, saying the Lakers would make that move because they've got Luka as the future, and they want young players on the court rather than someone who's 41 and likely entering his final seasons. He emphasized repeatedly that this hypothetical decision wouldn't be about James's game. It would be purely about age and organizational timeline. That analysis from Smith sparked intense debate because it forces us to confront uncomfortable realities about professional sports and franchise building. Loyalty and appreciation for past contributions matter enormously, and nobody can deny what James has meant to the Lakers organization since returning in 2018. He delivered a championship in 2020 during the bubble. He's been a model professional. He's handled the LA media market with grace, and he's mentored younger players throughout his tenure. But professional sports franchises ultimately have to make decisions based on championship windows and long-term sustainability rather than purely emotional considerations. When you have a 26-year-old MVP candidate like Doncic, who could be your franchise cornerstone for the next decade, organizational priorities naturally shift toward maximizing his prime years. The load management situation has become increasingly significant as this season has progressed. James sat out the victory against New Orleans on Sunday to rest his left leg, and all indications suggest he'll miss many more games throughout the remainder of the 2025 to 2026 season as the team carefully manages his workload to keep him fresh for potential playoff runs. That's a completely reasonable strategy for a 41-year-old player who's dealt with various injuries throughout his career, but it also creates rotation challenges and makes it difficult to build consistent chemistry when you're never quite sure who will be available on any given night. From a roster construction standpoint, having a player who requires that level of workload management occupying a significant salary cap space becomes problematic when you're trying to build sustainable championship contention. Let me be absolutely clear about something, because I want to make sure there's no misunderstanding about my perspective here. LeBron James is one of the greatest basketball players who has ever lived. His contributions to the Lakers franchise have been immense, and he absolutely still has the ability to impact winning basketball at the highest level. This isn't about disrespecting his legacy or suggesting he should retire immediately. This is about having honest conversations about franchise direction, about acknowledging that organizational timelines sometimes require difficult decisions, and about recognizing that the Lakers are in a unique position where they have a legitimate championship core built around a 26-year-old superstar who needs the ball in his hands and the organization's resources committed to surrounding him with complementary pieces. The reality that Doncic is now the face of the franchise isn't speculation or opinion. It's simply acknowledging what's obvious to anyone watching Lakers basketball. When Luka is on the court, the offense runs through him. Plays are designed to maximize his strengths, and the supporting cast is structured to complement his skill set. That's appropriate given his age, his ability level, and the fact that he represents the Lakers' championship window for the foreseeable future. James has handled this transition with remarkable professionalism, showing his ability to adapt his game and accept a different role than he's held throughout most of his career. That veteran leadership and willingness to sacrifice for team success is admirable and speaks to his character as a competitor. But professionalism and adaptability don't change the fundamental calculus that front offices must consider when constructing championship rosters. The Lakers have decisions to make about how they allocate playing time, how they distribute offensive touches, and how they structure their roster moving forward. Having a 41-year-old player who requires load management and needs the ball in his hands to be most effective creates natural complications when you're trying to maximize a 26-year-old generational talent's prime years. It's not about choosing between two players based on who's better in a vacuum. It's about organizational fit and strategic direction that aligns with championship timelines. The financial considerations also can't be ignored when discussing roster construction and franchise direction. James carries a significant salary cap hit, and while he's absolutely earned every dollar through his contributions and marketability, that money could theoretically be reallocated toward acquiring complementary pieces who fit better with Doncic's timeline. Maybe that means pursuing a defensive-minded wing who can guard elite perimeter players in playoff matchups. Maybe it means adding shooting depth to surround Doncic with floor spacers who maximize his driving lanes. Maybe it means investing in front court depth to replace what was lost when Davis was traded to Dallas. The point is that roster construction requires difficult resource allocation decisions, and sometimes the most logical basketball decisions don't align with sentimental preferences. Here's what makes this situation particularly interesting from my perspective, as someone who's followed the Lakers religiously for years. This organization has consistently shown a willingness to make bold moves when they believe it advances championship aspirations. Trading for Davis was bold. Trading Davis for Doncic was even bolder. If the front office concludes that moving on from James, whether through trade or simply allowing his contract to expire, represents the best path toward sustained championship contention built around Doncic's prime years, I wouldn't be shocked if they acted on that conclusion. This isn't the kind of organization that lets sentimentality override strategic thinking when it comes to competing for championships. But let's also acknowledge the alternative scenario where James remains with the Lakers for the remainder of his career, accepts his reduced role gracefully, and contributes as a veteran presence who can still deliver in important moments while primarily mentoring younger players and providing leadership. That's also a perfectly viable path forward that has historical precedent with other all-time greats who finished their careers in supporting roles with the teams they helped lead to championships. Tim Duncan spent his final seasons in San Antonio as a complementary piece rather than the focal point. Dirk Nowitzki did the same in Dallas. There's honor in that kind of career arc, and it wouldn't diminish James's legacy in any way. The optimistic perspective that I want to emphasize here is that regardless of how the James situation resolves itself, the Lakers are positioned exceptionally well for sustained success. We have a 26-year-old MVP candidate in Luka Doncic who's playing at an elite level and could be our franchise cornerstone for the next decade. We have Austin Reeves emerging as a legitimate third option who's still on a team-friendly contract. We have young players developing in our system who could become valuable rotation pieces, and we have a front office that's shown the courage to make bold moves when they believe it serves our championship aspirations. That 15-4 record isn't a fluke. It's a reflection of having multiple talented players who can contribute to winning basketball. The key for Lakers fans is to appreciate what we're watching right now, which is a franchise in transition from one era to another. We're witnessing the passing of the torch from one of the greatest players ever to a young superstar who could define the next chapter of Lakers basketball. That transition is always bittersweet because it means acknowledging that even legends eventually age and their roles naturally diminish. But it's also exciting because we're seeing the emergence of something special with Doncic and Reeves leading a team that's playing cohesive, winning basketball, and looking like legitimate championship contenders. Both things can be true simultaneously, and as Lakers fans, we should embrace the full complexity of this moment rather than seeing it in simple, binary terms. Whether James finishes his career in purple and gold or moves to another team for his final seasons doesn't change what he's already accomplished with this franchise. That 2020 championship will always be part of Lakers history, and his contributions during his second stint in L.A. deserve appreciation, regardless of how his tenure ultimately concludes. But we also have to be realistic about where the franchise is headed and what decisions best serve our championship aspirations moving forward. Doncic is the present and future, and the organization's resources and strategic planning need to reflect that reality if we want to maximize his prime years and deliver multiple championships during his tenure. Whether James finishes his career here or elsewhere, I'm genuinely excited about what the Lakers are building with Doncic and Reeves leading a team that's already 15-4 and looking like legitimate championship contenders. This franchise has always been about winning championships, and whatever decisions the front office makes should be evaluated through that lens, rather than pure sentimentality. If you want the absolute latest breaking Lakers news and the most comprehensive analysis available anywhere, you need to subscribe to Lakers News Fan Report immediately. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you never miss an update, and share this video with other Lakers fans who need to understand the strategic decisions shaping our franchise's future. This is your home for everything purple and gold, and I want you as part of this community as we follow this team's championship journey together. Let's go, Lakers!